This is the Etsy Conversations podcast resource episode number 54. I'll be talking about how to improve your shop's search ranking with good customer service and your About section. This is part 5 in the 7-part Ultimate Guide to Etsy Search series, and it's all about using your About section and gaining good reviews to help your shop rank higher in Etsy search. So let's do some housekeeping first. You might have noticed the new Etsy Super Seller badge around the site. If you're familiar with selling on eBay, this is pretty much Etsy's version of their top-rated seller or power seller badges. At least to me, that's the way I see it. They didn't say that, that's me saying that. Now, as of the time I'm recording this, I'm not one of those sellers who has received it yet, even though I meet the criteria it shows for super seller status. And so I'll just wait until I get mine. The good thing is, if you meet the criteria, then good for you. The bad thing is, if you're a new seller, then you might have a bit of an uphill struggle. And here's why. The criteria for getting this badge are: 1, you must have made at least 25 sales. 2, you have to have 5 or more positive reviews. And then 3, you have to ship the majority of your orders on time. Now, if you sell digital downloads, make sure you set everything up to ensure that your files are delivered on time. So that's the super seller. I don't know how long it's going to take for Etsy to roll this out to everyone, but we'll just watch and wait and see. Okay, so back to Etsy search. Now, we know that when it's determining search placement, the Etsy search algorithm looks at your shop's customer service history and whether or not it's in good standing per Etsy's policies. Then it uses all this information to calculate your shop's customer and market experience score. Remember that phrase, customer and market experience score. So listen to episode 50 of this Etsy Conversations podcast resource series to hear me explain all of that in more detail. So how can you increase this score? Because at the very top of the reviews section, Etsy shows buyers your average customer rating. And your average customer rating is the average of all the reviews you've received in the last 12 months. So it's really important that you get good reviews. So in general, you want to be responsive to buyers, properly manage buyer expectations, and you can do this by being clear in your descriptions and ensuring that your product photos show your products as clearly as possible so that buyers know exactly what they'll be getting. And then also ship everything on time. I mentioned in the last episode that I include handwritten thank you notes in all my packages. Now, if you get a bad review, try to make things right with the buyer. We've talked about that before, and see if they'll change their review once you work things out. Don't force them to do it, but most reasonable people, once you make them whole, will be willing to change a negative review. If that doesn't work and the review is 3 stars or less, you can respond publicly to it so other buyers will see this. Just remember to be professional, address the issue, and use your response to this negative review as an opportunity to instill confidence in future buyers, because if they read that, you kind of want it to be a positive ad, a positive reflection of you despite the negative review that was left for you. Next, you want to complete your About section. And here you can feel free to get creative. You can put pictures of yourself, put pictures of everyone who helps you in your shop. You can also include pictures of your workspace as well, or you making things or curating things if you're a vintage seller. Be sure to fill out your shop policies. Etsy offers a template and you can use the one that they provide and then just customize it to suit your shop. If you need to also go ahead and add an FAQ section. And then having your shop policies filled out will actually increase your visibility in search, and that will have a positive effect on where you're placed in search. Also, and this I read on the Etsy site, if you use the template that Etsy provides, you'll get even more of a boost. And I think they're doing this again. This part is just me postulating. I think Etsy is giving an additional boost to sellers who use the template they provide for the shop policies, so that things look a bit more uniform across the site. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Now, things that you want to avoid doing because they will negatively impact your customer service and market score is having cases opened up against you. Now, you can't control whether or not a buyer will open up a case against you, but if a buyer does open up against a case against you within 4 months or in the preceding 4 months, that's going to affect your score. Also, if you infringe on someone else's or another company's intellectual property, then that will negatively affect your score. So if you're a maker, then just be original. Don't use anyone else's designs or anyone else's content. Don't try and get creative also when it comes to your tags and titles. If you've listened to episodes, I think they were 170 something or 180 something, the episodes I did with the lawyer where he responded to questions about copyright issues and stuff. Don't get creative with tags and titles by saying things like inspired by or something like, because it's still not right. So you can't say a Disney-like dress or a Disney-like mouse character or inspired by, Pixar, whatever. Those don't put those in your tags and titles, because that is also considered infringing on another company's intellectual property. There's a whole process Etsy has in place for how infringement issues are handled on Etsy. And I actually created an episode about this for my paid community earlier this year. And maybe what I'll do is dig that up and then post that here so that you can hear about the process that Etsy has for when you are reported as infringing on someone else's intellectual property. Finally, if you hang out in the Etsy forums, then just be sure to behave yourself while you're there. Make sure you follow the community guidelines, because if you run afoul of them and you get a warning email from Etsy, that will negatively affect your shop's customer and market experience score. And the negative effect that will have will last for a good 1 year from the date it's issued. This was news to me. I didn't know that if you misbehave in the Etsy forums and Etsy sends you a warning email, that affects your score and your ranking in search. So hopefully that will save anyone who hangs out in the forums and sometimes gets, I don't know. Hopefully that will save you some trouble down the road. Etsy says that a few bad reviews or having any IP issues will not permanently affect your search ranking. So I guess it's just temporary, but it will. You just don't want that happening anyway. Okay, so the last currently available part in this series is all about how to optimize your shop for Etsy search. But I reviewed it and the information there is pretty redundant because we've pretty much covered it all in depth in previous episodes. So in the next episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast resource episodes, I'll be talking about something else. Thank you for listening to this episode. Please join me next week when I'll be talking with Bonnie Lacat of Bonnie Lacat Designs. And we'll be talking about teaching on Skillshare. That's a new one for us on the podcast, and selling art on Etsy. And I will be back next week.